Welcome to another episode of Leth Talk. I got an interesting guest with us. We did one take before and the audio wasn't working, and we're here for take two. I've got Trevor Lewington with Economic Development Lethbridge. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Take two is always better, so I hope we've improved our game this time.
We have the audio's working, lights, camera, action, everything's looking, studio's great, so we're good.
We're good to go. Awesome.
Appreciate you joining me again. I guess we'll kind of give a little recap because obviously people weren't able to hear what we were chatting about last time. So tell me, what is Economic Development Lethbridge?
Yeah, so Economic Development Lethbridge is an independent not-for-profit. So we receive the vast majority of our funding from the city of Lethbridge, but we have an independent board of directors. And our mandate is really a couple of things. Sort of at a macro level, our job is to strengthen and diversify the Lethbridge economy. We're here to create jobs, support business, attract new investment. And so we work with local companies, with investors from the outside, and it's really anything that will help promote Lethbridge to international audiences, actually sell the city, if you will. Working with government departments to understand policy issues or challenges that might be holding businesses back, and then helping local business solve problems and connect them to resources. So we're really here to create jobs and really just try and grow Lethbridge's economy.
So, are you kind of government funded or are you kind of privately funded? How does that work? Or do you just kind of tell me, how does that work?
Yeah, the vast majority of it is government funded. So about 40% of our budget comes from the city of Lethbridge. And then the vast majority of the rest from either the province or the federal government. So different programs that we operate on their behalf.
Oh, even the federal too, eh?
Even the federal government.
Oh.
And then we do operate Tech Connect, which is a technology incubator here in town. And we do have some commercial tenants in that building who pay market rates for their rent as a part of being a part of our building and our community. And so we do have some revenues from some of the services we sell and some of the services we offer.
Nice. So you can kind of subsidize some of that cost.
Exactly.
And right. So is this just kind of in Lethbridge, or do other municipalities have this too? Do we got one in Calgary, Red Deer, and does Medicine have anything like Edmonton?
Yeah, it's a great question. Economic development is usually part of every community. So whether it's a government department or an external organization like mine, most communities have someone that's responsible for economic development. And it varies across the country. About half are municipal departments. So it's a municipal city or town employee of an internal department that's doing the work. That's the case in Medicine Hat. It's an internal department for them. Red Deer is similar. And then in typically larger centers, it usually gets spun out to an independent organization like ours. So Calgary Economic Development, Fort McMurray Wood Buffalo has an economic development and tourism group.
Okay.
So they look different. They have different names. They have different services and responsibilities. But just about every community, there will be someone that's responsible for economic development. And that's a key resource for your listeners. If you're planning to do business in a new community or you're going into a new market, try and find out who the economic development human is, because their job, the only reason they exist is to help people who have questions about, can I buy property here? What's available? What is this community about? What are the demographics? Typically, people like me have all of that information. We're waiting for someone to call so we can give it to you.
Yeah, you got all the numbers on the growth and because I know when I made that Lethbridge video, I was able to get some stats from you, what's the growth happening behind Lethbridge, what's our kind of economy doing here in Lethbridge, and you gave me some pretty interesting stats. I think one of them was talking about how much we export actually was
right.
Over 3 billion, I think it was.
2.2 billion.
2.2.
And think about that, a city of 100,000 people and over $2 billion worth of stuff being made here and shipped somewhere else. Which is impressive.
It is really impressive. And it's obviously our kind of agriculture sector is probably a huge driver for that. And food's not going down anytime soon. So it's only going to go up. But yeah, and then that's going to increase. And you had given another stat was that we had passed Calgary and Edmonton in numbers from previous years too.
Yeah, so during COVID in particular, during the pandemic, the rate of growth in exports for the rest of Alberta actually shrank. So Edmonton and Calgary, obviously much bigger markets. They ship way more stuff than we do. The total dollar value was much larger, but their growth shrank and they actually saw decreases. And at that same time, each of the last 4 years, Lethbridge has grown exports by double digits. So our rate of growth and what we produce and what we ship elsewhere has grown faster than any other part of the province, which I think is really interesting.
So are these numbers looked at, I guess, every year or every kind of 5 years?
Yeah, thankfully there's people on my team way smarter than me that manage all of those numbers and dig into, the Stats Canada information. Things like exports and even some of the housing data is only produced once a year. So we only get it, when it's produced by the government. There are, however, things like unemployment that are monthly. There are some other data sets that we get more frequently. So it really just depends what metric or what key measure we're talking about in terms of how it's collected, what level of government's involved, and how frequently they update those models.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. So obviously, like with our city, we're seeing a ton of growth with our economy and our population. So I guess what's the kind of biggest opportunity you see for Lethbridge having?
Yeah, I really do think that Lethbridge's sort of foundation in exports is something we need to look at the future. We know, for example, there's some challenges on the horizon with potential tariffs and cross-border challenges, but we've grown our manufacturing sector significantly over the last number of years. It's one of the largest employers in the city in terms of total employment. And so if we can continue to diversify what we produce here, the markets that we serve, I think there's very few people that know that the PT6 jet engine is made here by Pratt & Whitney in Lethbridge. They're shipped all over the world. And that's a very high-tech, piece of equipment that's made and assembled right here in town.
Which is really cool, right? In a population of 100,000, right?
Right.
And I guess being close to the border, that really helps us, possibly.
We've got companies like Flexahopper Plastics. They do rotomolding, so they do plastic containers. Typically in agriculture is their biggest market.
Okay.
But they've exported to Mexico, to China, to Europe, and they're well known around the world in their industry, and they're based here in Lethbridge. So we've got examples of really small family-owned businesses like Flexahopper, as well as large multinationals like a Pratt & Whitney. So we've got this really interesting blend of skill and innovation and manufacturing excellence. And to me, that's a big opportunity for Lethbridge in the future.
So, and I remember kind of reading, like obviously Calgary, they're trying to diversify and go into more into kind of tech.
Right.
And we are too, kind of a little bit too. We're getting more into the tech and manufacturing side of things, if I'm not corrected, right?
Yeah, you bet. So, part of the reason 11 years ago, all levels of government invested in a technology incubator in Lethbridge is people saw that potential, right? So we've graduated a number of companies from the incubator over the years, and we've got a number of companies that we work with on an annual basis that are in the tech space. So as an example, we have a company, Daniola Corporation. They're actually building a blockchain platform for commodity exchange and monetary exchange in the mining industry in Africa.
Wow.
Based here in Lethbridge. So as an example of, technology, and I think pandemic actually accelerated this, the laptop sort of business, you can do business in Africa from here if you have the right tools. So why don't we have people here in town building those tools for others to use, which I think is a perfect example of the interesting and crazy things that are going on in town that sometimes people have just no idea that even exists.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So I guess we obviously have our pros and we have our cons.
For
sure. So if you kind of had like a magic wand and you could change one thing, I guess, about Lethbridge's economy, what would you change overnight?
The one thing that we are challenged with is retaining talent, right? So the University of Lethbridge in particular is known as a destination university. About 80% of the students come from somewhere else, typically Calgary or other parts of Alberta, but globally as well. But by the time they're a couple of years past graduation, most of them have left for other jobs and opportunities. And part of that is the size of Lethbridge's economy. People that graduate need those entry-level career positions, and there's just only so many jobs in Lethbridge at that level, right? But if we're going to compete in the future, and let's face it, it's a digitally powered world. Technology is driving every industry. There's really no tech industry anymore. Everything's a tech industry.
Yeah.
We're going to need as much of that, amazing talent that we have, when we have it here, to stay here and build local companies. And so there's a number of players at the table, industry, government, the university, the Polytechnic as well, looking at student retention and how do we transform Lethbridge to truly be that place where people want to stay, grow their life, build their family, and sort of that they don't have to go anywhere else to get the experiences that they need.
Now, do you think they're kind of moving not only just to get that experiences because of the size of Lethbridge maybe? And like what it has to offer, I guess?
For sure. There's no question that even just the number of opportunities is limited because of the size of our market. And, we have a pretty vibrant arts scene. We have a pretty active lifestyle here. If you want to go to the mountains, it's only, 90 minutes away to the ski hill.
Yeah.
But I think, younger generations, certainly my children and my grandkids, are probably more interested in that urban lifestyle and what they perceive to be the attraction of the big city. I'm not convinced it's this and all that. But people sometimes have to go and experience that and realize the cost, the crime, the complexity. It's like, I can go back home.
Well, everybody always asks me like, oh, why do you want to stay in Lethbridge? Because I'm born and raised here. And I'm like, well, why not? It's so nice. It's convenient. I'm like, you go to Calgary from the north to the south. No, that's an hour at like minimum. That's not including if there's any traffic or anything like that. Yeah. And then like here from west side to south side, you're maybe traffic is 15 minutes, so right. 20 minutes. But how much can you go out really, right? Like you're going to go out and eat every day. Like I'm going to be a balloon and New Year's resolutions are starting, right? So maybe here's your time to kind of keep track on that. But you can go to Calgary, you can go to anywhere you want for the weekend. Right.
And I do think that's part of the attraction of Lethbridge. First of all, it's affordable, right? Relatively affordable compared to most other markets in the province, housing in particular, but just cost of living is pretty affordable. The commute times, as you said, I think the last time I checked the stats, we're one of the few places in Western Canada where more than 75% of our population has a commute time of less than 15 minutes. So that's a metric that, Stats Canada actually tracks.
Wow.
So we're one of the top performing urban areas in Western Canada for that metric. So, okay, that's great. To your point, Calgary's, if you drive properly, about 2 hours away.
Yeah.
The U.S. border, about an hour. The mountains, 90 minutes. Waterton, International Peace Park with Glacier, it's only an hour and a bit away. So, yeah, okay, so Lethbridge maybe doesn't have everything because of its size, but if you look at the broader region within, sort of that circle, what else could you possibly need?
The only thing I could think of is a better airport, personally. That's the only, one of the biggest things. I think it's pretty, every time you want to go and travel, you got to go drive the 2 hours, because if you're going to go fly out from the Lethbridge airport, well, you're going to go fly out there and then you got to wait in Calgary for X amount of hours, right? So that's one of the bigger things. But once we kind of get a little bit better grip on that, I think it'll be a lot better. And it was kind of interesting. I read a new stat that just came out. 27,000, I believe it was, individuals came from other provinces to Alberta in this past year. So that's huge, right? Yeah. For all those reasons why. And then slowly when they start to see what's happening in Calgary, for instance, that it's not affordable, your commute time is so much, then they kind of make their way down here. And I know people who have made their way down here and they're like, no, we love it. We have family in Ontario and Calgary and Vancouver, and here it's so much more affordable. We don't need to worry about traffic, and our crime is actually relatively pretty safe.
Correct.
Right? So it's starting to get traction on what really is important.
Yeah, I mean, again, perception is reality sometimes, but the more we can educate people about the advantages of Lethbridge, counter some of the negative things that are out there. I mean, okay, yes, at one point, if you Google Lethbridge, certainly we had the highest crime severity index nationally.
But that was all minor crime, though, right?
It was all minor crime, and it's come down double digits each of the last 4 years. And I was just meeting with the police chief a couple of weeks ago before Christmas, and the 2024 stats aren't out yet, but you'll see another reduction when those numbers are finally released. So I think the more important thing is we're making progress, and we are seeing the impact of positive strategies, whether it's crime or, homelessness. Is there homelessness in Lethbridge? For sure. it's an international problem. The opioid crisis is not unique to Southern Alberta.
No.
And so it's all about how do we come together as a community, government, citizens, other organizations and agencies, and how do we work together to solve those things? And I think we are seeing progress.
Yeah, especially with that housing that's being built on Stafford, like that's going to be huge, right? Yeah. And then they're doing that expansion on the shelter and everything like that. So there are pieces in place that are now we're going to start to see the effects of it. And it's essentially like a hole has been dug. Now you just got to stop digging and start kind of slowly filling it in a little bit. And like you said, it's a national problem. Right, almost an international problem. Right, you've been to probably Vancouver. You go to 100%. Vancouver, it's pretty bad. You go to Edmonton, you go to Kelowna, you go to Ottawa. Like I went to Ontario, it was pretty bad there too. Right, so like it's everywhere. It just seems like in Lethbridge, people are so kind of sensitive to the situation. Is maybe just because we don't have those high-rise buildings, so people can hide or whatever it is. But it's everywhere. Like you can't control it, right?
I think some of it comes from where, Lethbridge, when I first moved here 20-ish years ago, was around 55 to 60,000 people. So it very much was a small town. It still is in many ways, but we have seen very significant growth, and with growth comes challenges. It is not the community, as some people say, it's not the way it used to be. Yeah, it's doubled in size, and of course it's different. So there's growing pains with that.
Society has changed.
Society has changed. So that is what it is. How do we move forward, and how do we address the issues? And that's not to minimize. There are issues with crime and vandalism, for example, in the downtown. There are some challenges with the social issues and how do we address those. But at the same time, we're learning from other communities. There's many people devoting their time and energy against it, and we are making progress. So it's how do we accelerate that? How do we do more?
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like downtown scene, like I sit on the board for downtown BRZ, and things are changing, right? And there's a lot of talk on how we can continue to improve it and how we can get people going down there. And when you see people down there, like you don't even realize what's going on. There is no issue really. Right, when there's a lot of people, like there's a lot of different events that happen during the summertime, especially.
Very vibrant.
It's really vibrant. You got a lot great places you can just walk to, have an ice cream or whatever, have a little coffee and sit down and enjoy. Right, so the city definitely has a lot to offer, and then even to the art galleries right there. Absolutely. Right. So I guess with being the CEO of Economic Development, what is the thing that you are most proud of our city and what you do?
When you step away from Lethbridge, so when I get to work with my colleagues around the rest of the province or even nationally and internationally, one of the things we're known for is the collaboration that you see in Lethbridge. And so that includes, entrepreneurs and businesses working together. It includes social agencies. It includes all kinds of government entities. But for me, we're responsible for something called the Regional Innovation Network of Southern Alberta. That's a really long name. The acronym is RINSA. But that network of about 15 or 16 partners exists to support entrepreneurs. So that group works very closely together and helps determine if a file comes in, an entrepreneur needs prototyping, for example, on a product. Well, that's not something my organization can do very well, but we know we've got the skills at Lethbridge Polytechnic. So with all of those people sitting around the table, we can figure out ways to support businesses the best and who's better positioned to do that. That's been studied internationally. So there was an impact report. It was a scholar from the UK who actually did the investigation of RINSA, of Southern Alberta's entrepreneurial ecosystem. And we've been recognized internationally for the collaborative and really interesting environment that's been created here. And again, very few people in Lethbridge probably know that, or even know what some of those services are available to them. So I think as much as I'm proud of our role in helping build that, it's certainly not all about us. We're just one player in that system. But the more we can build that up and leverage that, it's something that places like Red Deer or Grand Prairie don't have. They're not as effective as we are. That's been recognized.
Yeah.
So let's get at it.
Well, I guess it's also too, it's a great stepping stone to attract more and better other opportunities.
100%.
right? So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, because there's a lot of things that you had mentioned to me previously. Like I didn't know like that we offered. Like you were talking about how our irrigation system at the Lethbridge College, like it's really recognizable and distinguished, and it's attracting people all over the world to kind of study and understand like how our irrigation systems work. Like I didn't know that, right? So it's. I think we just gotta get the information out there a little bit more, and yeah, changing, I guess, that Lethbridge College to Lethbridge Polytech was a big change too for us, right? So it'll help kind of attract more individuals to Lethbridge, I guess.
And, you know, again, we have these two world-class post-secondary institutions, and we talked about a little bit last time, the Mueller Irrigation Group at Lethbridge Polytechnic. There's a research farm just outside the city limits. We get visitors from Jordan, from Israel, people from around the world come here to learn what we're doing in irrigation. That's pretty amazing. Over at the university, you know, across the river, Dr. Naylor's work, I think there's very few people that understand that some of his technology is on the Hubble Space Telescope.
Wow.
That research, that knowledge that was created in Lethbridge is recognized around the world, and actually around the world in space, for the impact that it has, right? So again, we've got this amazing talent, this global world-class expertise that's here. We're doing a lot of applied research. My job, I think, is how do we build on that? How do we get more commercialization of those technologies? And how do we use that to attract other companies and more investment? You know, that's one of the key things when a company's looking to relocate, maybe build a brand new manufacturing plant to build widgets here. They want to know that the workforce, the talent is here. Again, that's why we have universities and polytechnics. But they also want to know that there's an ecosystem of researchers and, you know, PhDs and other resources that they can tap into to drive their business. Well, Lethbridge does an amazing job of that.
Well, now that we have all these great facilities now, like you said, now hopefully these companies, they start to kind of more establish themselves here in Lethbridge, and then those people can stay, and then it's kind of a trickle down effect. Like our population will grow, we'll get more services and everything. So yeah,
it is definitely a ripple effect, right? So again, sometimes economic developers are accused of chasing smokestacks. Yes, we want to attract new businesses here, but just as important, in fact, more jobs are created when you help existing businesses grow. But the more you do that, the more you help local business grow and invest, the more you bring new companies here, people see that there's better employment, they're more confident. You know, it has a cumulative effect, and that's why there's such a focus to try and grow the economy and grow opportunities, because nobody wants to live in a place that's shrinking.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work or live in a place that feels depressed, is dark and dingy. And so
you're not trying to target Medicine Hat now, are you?
Well, you know, I would never do that, because I'm sure my colleague Selena from Medicine Hat might be watching, and we'll see if my phone rings. No, but you know what makes Lethbridge different? Because we're not Medicine Hat.
Yeah.
They're very different economies, very different histories. I'll say this: there's nothing wrong with Medicine Hat, maybe, but we're different, right? So,
in a better way.
Why do people choose Lethbridge? For all of the reasons that we've already talked about, and how do we continue to build on that, gain momentum, and grow it more?
Well, we've seen that happen with the expansion of the McCain plant, right? With that Cavendish, and those are the ones that I guess kind of get the most publicity behind it.
Totally.
Right? But that in the coolest thing I thought was about our newest post-secondary part was that science center. Like that is a very impressive establishment, right? Like we got a private tour, which was pretty cool. And then right as you enter, there's a huge kind of like life-size periodic table, that was pretty cool.
With all the elements in the little glass compartments.
Yeah, that was really cool. And then they had like this zero gravity kind of testing center where they do for aerospace. And then the floating boardroom. And I still remember that was when the Mandalorian Star Wars came out. There was a bunch of little mini Yodas that were a bunch all throughout the university for some reason. Nice. But it's a really impressive building. So if you haven't checked it out, like absolutely, I'd say check it out. They have a lot of cool programs too. I didn't know for the youth, like robotics, camps and different things to kind of get our younger generation involved into the sciences.
Yeah, in the Science Commons building, which is the newest addition to the campus, just around from that floating boardroom, there's actually dedicated space for high school and secondary school programming. So the idea, University Smart, bring in students that are your future students and create that pipeline.
Yeah.
But physically bring them into the building, right? Get them to see these labs. Most of the labs, the whole concept of the building is science on display. You can walk down every hallway and see into just about every lab because they really want to show the work that's happening, the environment, the technology, the equipment. And so the more we can get kids even as early as elementary involved in, to your point, robotics competitions, hopefully sparking that curiosity and really getting them engaged in, I want to pursue this.
Yeah. No, it's pretty cool. So I guess fast forward 10 years, what does Lethbridge look like? Has it changed? Has it stayed the same for the good or for the bad?
Well, of course, it's only going to get better. So that's why you need to be here. I think the thing that stays the same in my mind is our foundation in agriculture and value-added food, right? So we use the phrase Southern Alberta feeds the world. We already have an enormous food industry here. Lethbridge is one anchor. We're at the heart of what we call Canada's premier food corridor. There's tons of value-added food processing that happens here. We make food. And there's a hungry world out there looking for more food. We have, I think, an obligation to take the amazing agriculture around here. We have, award-winning producers and growers in our region. How do we take more of that food, produce actual finished products, consumer goods here, and feed the rest of the world by shipping it away? That, I think, is our foundation. It's the largest part of our economy. We already have a global reputation in this region for that. That's not going to change, but we can build on that. We can grow it. We can build on that strength. Where I think we have opportunity, and we've been talking about the post-secondaries, the applied research, manufacturing, is how do we take our game to the next level, right? Mm-hmm. So even though we've got these, again, world-class companies making really cool products. So as an example, did you know every bear-proof bin in national parks in this country are produced in Lethbridge by Halal?
I didn't know that.
Right? So okay, how do we now make the next generation of high-tech bear bins and every, garbage can innovation that's available? Why can't we be that center of excellence for that thing? We've got pockets of it, like I said, in irrigation. Well, why isn't every major global player in irrigation here? How do we build on those pockets where we have strength and excellence and really drive it home, right? Pratt & Whitney, again, they make the engines, typically used in helicopters and turboprops. So why aren't those aircraft manufacturers also here, right? That to me is linking those pieces, connecting the dots, taking what we have and building it up even more and putting it together in a way that transforms Lethbridge 10 years from now. That's the goal.
Yeah. So expand our manufacturing. Our agriculture is a huge stepping stone on what we're going to be branching off of.
For
but
sure.
Manufacturing, do you see us being a big kind of tech area for Silicon Valley or anything like that?
Well,
or
again, I think you need to look no further than 2 hours up the highway in Calgary, right? Oil and gas town, boom bust. They've done a masterful job of really attracting the tech business and the tech industry, and Calgary has become a major hub for venture investment. They've just done some amazing work, which we're shamelessly stealing and copying where it makes sense. Lethbridge is not going to be Calgary. Lethbridge is never going to be Vancouver. We're never going to grow that big, thankfully, because that's our tactical advantage. But we can move way faster, right? We can gather the troops and move way faster in those bigger centers.
Yep.
And so we're not going to try and take on Calgary, but what's the piece that we're really good at? So for example, we already have some expertise locally around geospatial technologies, so drones and satellite imagery for agriculture. All right, how do we become the global experts in that space? We're never probably going to build drones here. Medicine Hat's doing some of that work. We're never going to be able to compete necessarily with the big US manufacturers. But what's that sliver of the pie that Lethbridge would hands down be the best for? And let's go after that, right? Creative industries.
Yeah.
We've been really focused over the last year on growing our share of film and television production, a growing industry in Alberta in particular. Calgary, again, has some production facilities. They're close to Banff. There's some real advantages. They're able to attract things like The Last of Us, big production shows, global, massive productions. we probably won't be able to compete directly. We're never going to get that whole thing here. We don't have the facilities, we don't have the people, but we have just as much really cool, interesting scenery. You know, go an hour that way, it's grassland. Go an hour that way, it's mountains. There's lots of we can compete. And so again, where do we find the little parts where we can truly knock it out of the park? And we've seen The Last of Us shot around here. Robin Williams' movie RV was shot in the past. Like, there's examples. How do we continue to build on the part where we're good at it and it matches our strengths and it's not going to take away from what Lethbridge is all about?
It's funny that you mentioned that Robin Williams movie. They actually came down to my shop when I used to have LATs, and they were doing a bunch of shopping there, and they were saying, oh yeah, we're shooting this movie with Robin Williams and everything. I still remember that.
And that's why those industries matter, right? Because those production crews were buying from local businesses.
Exactly.
And that's what we want to, that's why we bring those industries here.
No, it's interesting. Yeah. No, Lethbridge definitely has a lot to offer. Like you said, we're not going to be a Calgary. We're not going to be a Vancouver, but we need to we are setting ourselves apart. Not we need to, but we are setting ourselves apart in various ways, in a lot of good ways. So no, and we're also an hour and a half, 2 hours away from the Great Falls airport, which is only 40 minutes away from Vegas. So,
you know, and again, everyone I think is frustrated with the airport, including the folks at the airport in the city who are working hard to try and figure this out.
Oh, this wasn't a shot at them, but this is just to say we're close to Vegas.
but where else in Canada can you fly to Vegas for $99?
No.
It doesn't exist, right? And yet we've got this resource 2 hours-ish away at the Great Falls Airport. And it's one of the challenges to bringing more flights to Lethbridge is you're so close to Calgary with 80-some international flights every day, and a major hub in Great Falls that connects to the U.S. system. So that is one of the reasons Lethbridge is at where it's at with air service, is we have these other two airports that are conveniently really close, but that is also an advantage. I mean, Vegas is just one example. I mean, again, I have friends in Denver. I've spent a little bit of time over the last couple of years in Denver back and forth. And I always shop Calgary versus Great Falls, and it depends on the season and the airline and what's going on. But I can usually get there round trip for under $200.
Wow.
That's a pretty easy trip. That's a pretty good weekend, right?
Yeah.
And that, again, is an advantage I think Lethbridge we can embrace. And how do you I mean, again, Calgary, 80 destinations-ish every day, direct global flights. It's literally a 2-hour drive away, or a flight when you can get one out of Lethbridge, and boom, you're globally available and accessible. But you can live here, enjoy the lifestyle here, but still travel to and work anywhere you need to around the world.
Yeah, it's true.
It's convenient.
Right? It's convenient. So no, thank you very much for being a part of this episode of Leth Talk. If you liked what you saw and want to check out another great guest, let me know down in the comments who we should have on next. Thanks, Trevor.
Hey, good to see you. Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Thank you. Appreciate it.